community program launch, and you can see this is looking cozy, beautiful, and you are really, are ready for this wonderful gathering here today. Before I say so much, because we are a bit late to today's program, I just want to call on each of you to stand up or let's rise for the Kenya National Anthem and the East African National Anthem. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let us stand up on our feet as we sing the national anthem.
Mungu nguvu yetu, ilete baraka kwetu, haki iwe ngao na mlinzi, na tukae na undugu, amani na uhuru, raha tupate na usawi. Mungu twaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuwajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, we thank you for this wonderful day. We have gathered here as youth of this nation and various stakeholders from different areas. God, we pray the Lord, as we begin this event, be it, and Lord, as we continue with it, Lord, let what was planned to happen, that it may happen according to your will. For I pray this prayer, trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen. We may have our say. Thank you.
And I'll be your host. I'll be your master of ceremony. Sorry, my name is Florence Ayo Onyango. So I'll just want to welcome on stage Mr. Wycliffe Guguni to give us the welcoming remarks and introductions.
Hello, everyone. Hello, how are you doing? Are you feeling good despite the cold weather? So, as it has been mentioned, my name is Wycliffe Guguni. Some of you know me, some do not, but just for the sake of those ones who we are meeting for the first time, let me explain a little about myself. So I'm privileged to be the country lead for Kectil. I'm serving to set up the institution here in Kenya, and I'm also serving in the Kectil Global Emeritus Board in establishing the alumni network for Kectil. I'm also working with social entrepreneurs in a network called Fast Forward 2030. I'm coordinating activities of social entrepreneurs in Africa, and this network is supported and hosted at the University College of London under the Institute of Global Prosperity. So my work majorly involves working with young people, the youth, and with the youth, I work majorly on social innovation, the process of developing ideas to solve societal problems, and on entrepreneurship, and now through Kectil on leadership. So I want to take this opportunity also, after introducing myself, to welcome you all and to say thank you for honoring our invitation, and to mention that we are expecting a very engaging session with you. We expect to learn more from you as you learn from us. So right from now, don't approach this session with an attitude of sitting and listening. Approach the session with an attitude of engaging with us. So think through the ideas that are going to be shared here. Ask questions And as they say, it's better to ask questions than to give answers, because questions provoke more thought. So I'm expecting more questions from you. So just to begin, also in these introductory remarks, is that I don't work alone. I work with a team. We're a very small team. So there are people who are responsible for organizing all these, and we are two of us here. Essentially, we work as three people. The other guy is the accountant. His name is Steve Kimandi. In absentia, he traveled to Uganda, but he sent his greetings. So I want to call my team member to say hello to you guys. Bwana Tony Olela.
How are you guys? Are you fine? Yes, so thank you so much, guys, for keeping time. You are the only Africans for the first time I'm meeting in my life for being here in time. So as mentioned by Guguni, my name is Olela Tony. I'm a gender expert and SRHR advocate. Very passionate in ensuring that young people have the right platform where they can be empowered and thrive. So for Kectil, I'm the operations manager for the Kenya country office. So yes, I think we'll talk more later in the day. Otherwise, enjoy, network, and in case you know anybody who received an invite to come here, kindly pin them the location. I've just received a call from another hotel manager telling us, why did you send people here without telling me? I think they're just lost. But please tell them we are ready, food is boiling. They rush before the food gets cold. Sindio? Otherwise, thank you so much and looking forward to interacting with all of you. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause to Tony. Yeah, so I know not all of us are so familiar with Kectil, and I'd like to give a background information about Kectil so that you are a little bit more familiar beyond what you probably have read online or what you've heard from your friends, to give you context. So I'm going to read a few statistics also in relation to this part of the introduction. And so Kectil stands for Knowles Education and Charitable Trust in Leadership as well. So it's a trust that is owned by the Malma Knowles Family Foundation, based in Atlanta, that is registered in the US as a not-for-profit organization. The founder and the executive director of Kectil is known as Sherry Knowles. And how Kectil came about, it was in 2015, towards the end of 2015. And Sherry Knowles, professionally, she's an intellectual property lawyer, and she runs a law firm in Atlanta on intellectual property. She has over 30 years of experience working in intellectual property in the corporate space, majorly dealing with biotechnology and pharmaceuticals. So during this time, she was in her kitchen and on the kitchen table with her friends, and she was wondering, what kind of additional value can I provide to the world? And considering that her background is in intellectual property and innovations, she thought, out of the networks that have amassed in the world, she was the head of intellectual property in GlaxoSmithKline globally, and she had offices in London and in the US, and she had led patenting of various innovations in pharmaceutical industry. So she decided that I would like to reach out to young people in developing countries, young innovators, and connect them to the global network of established or experienced innovators. And so in the month of August 2016, at the World Intellectual Property Organization conference, an article was published about Kectil for the first time. And the article was entitled, "A Spotlight on Young Inventors in Developing Countries." For those of you who don't know what World Intellectual Property Organization is, It's one of the 16 specialized entities of the United Nations, and it's the biggest intellectual property organization in the world. And the World Intellectual Property has got membership of over 193 countries in the world. So publishing of the article about Kectil in the WIPO magazine was a seed that spread the information globally. And in the same year, in 2016, I was privileged to meet Sherry and have dinner with her here in Nairobi when she was visiting. And during that time, I was a student leader, and in our conversation, she shared the dream that she has of getting young people together and building this global network of young innovators who are solving problems. And it is from that conversation that the seed was planted in Kenya at Strathmore University, and it spread to other places. She met a number of young people also at the Kempinski Hotel from other regions in the country. And that is how Kectil started to grow. And right now, Kectil is in almost 100 countries in the world. And it has applications of over 2,500 annually. Young people apply to the Kectil program. So this background history is to tell you that you're part of something so, so big. And in 2022, the decision to decentralize parts of the operations of the Kectil program was made, and that is why the Kenyan Center was established, the Uganda Center was established, the Zambia Center was established. And if you check online, you'll see the Kectil in Zambia, you'll see activities of Kectil in Uganda, and then here in Kenya, you'll see our activities. So regional offices are growing. And in May, we have an international conference in Zambia. Zambia is hosting a global conference in May. So we're looking forward to the growth, and there are more centers that are being established. I won't preempt that news. You'll get to see there are a couple of other countries that will have new centers in the near future. So that's about Kectil for you to know. And so today we are here because we are launching a program for Kenya, which is the Kectil Kenya 2024 program. And we have 3 areas that we're looking at. We're looking to seek ways in which you can involve young people to participate in policy decisions with the aim of improving public policy. Second, we're looking to engage young people in mentorship, specifically in the area of entrepreneurship. And then number 3, we're looking to engage young people in training, which we've done since 2022. Actually 2021, apologies for that. 2021, in training on social innovation, ways in which innovation can help solve social problems. So since our operations in Kectil, we've had a number of successes. Some of you guys are part of the success stories, and you'll get to hear from the panel. So we've done cohort training on design thinking, process of social innovations. We've churned out 10 different projects. They are in inclusive businesses. We've had young people win funding for their projects. We've gotten others get seed capital to start up their projects. And in these trainings, we've generated solutions that are being implemented in society. And so we thought, why don't we go a step further to partner with other people and involve mentorship as well as public policy to improve on how we govern? Why is it so important for us to engage in entrepreneurial mentorship? Like I've mentioned to you that I work with startups and social entrepreneurs in the continent. The reason why I believe in the idea of social entrepreneurship is because data shows that that's the fastest way towards development in Africa. Aid has failed, and even the amount of aid that is given to Africa, if you compare it to foreign direct investments and remittance, it's the lowest amount. So if we nurture entrepreneurs in the continent, it means that we are going to generate more revenue, and at the same time, we are solving some of the complex problems that we have in the continent. So that is the reason why I'm so adamant about this idea of social entrepreneurship. Sweden Business, which has got offices in Kenya here and some in South Africa, did a report post-COVID. And the report was titled Africa, a ground for innovation and opportunity, a fertile ground for innovation and opportunity. And the report also had a statement, a shift from brick and mortar industrialization to innovation for sustainable development. I want to read to you some of the important points that came out of this report that will get you to think about the conversations we are going to have today. In that report, Sweden Business proposed 6-point approach to crack the code of development in Africa, especially in the space of innovation. I won't talk about all the 6, but I'm going to point out a few that are critical to these conversations today. One is that take time to invest in long-term relationship. That should not be underestimated, long-term relationship. So the reason why they say that that is an important code is that companies that have established long-term relationships are able to penetrate markets and establish long-term customers for growth within the continent. Another crack code is that dare to explore the unexplored. The degrees of matureness differ greatly between markets, regions, and sectors. So the companies that dare to explore areas that have not been explored have a chance of creating a revolution. So this is also supporting the idea of innovating, because innovation is pegged on knowledge, mostly on unexplored areas. Another thing that is important in these 6 points is that strive towards the presence of several geographical regions. So Africa has East Africa, West Africa, South, and Central. So these are regions have got different competencies and different characteristics. So in the process of growth, trying to study and understand how these different regions could complement each other is important. So that pegs onto the 4th point of collaboration with communities, customers, competitors, and other stakeholders, could be policymakers, researchers, and such like. And then number 6 is the digital technologies, which are here to stay, and mobile connectivity, which has greatly changed the landscape of doing business and innovation in all parts of the world. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is a panelist, Sankara Gitao, and she proposed an idea which I found very interesting. How many of you have heard of public participation? You know the process of policy making and public participation, right? And she mentioned, what if we could do public participation online? So you, from your county in Kakamega or from Nyeri, you know your county has got a policy that intends to implement, and you can go online, participate in it virtually, and it's documented and it's forwarded. So this is a digital technology revolution. You don't need to gather people in a church or in a school for public participation to take place. So this is about digital technologies. So another thing that this report said, other than the 6 point, is that Africa is home to the youngest populations in the world. You know that? Over 60% of the African population is below 25 years. Interestingly, it's not just being young. Africa has got the fastest growing population. Okay, China has got a lot of people. India has got a lot of people. But you know what's unique about Africa? Is that the median age in Africa is around 18 or below. China is about 39, India is about 28. So it means that within Africa, we have more young people who have energy, but they are not yet productive. While in these other countries, we have people who are productive already. They're engaging in the economy. So we have a question of how are we going to make these young people productive in Africa. Otherwise, you're going to deal with a lot of ills in the society. So I'm just throwing these points to get you to start to think about the conversations that we're going to have. This report said that with this young population, there's a promise of major consumption. There's a promise of major consumption. We are looked as consumers, not producers. It's a good and a bad thing at the same time. So this is a market for the next 3 decades. Global companies are looking at us as a market for the next 3 decades, which needs to be explored. And it is increasingly being digitalized and mobile enabled. So the emerging digital ecosystem is particularly crucial multiplier for the growth, since access to smartphones and other devices enhance consumer information, networking, job creation, resources, and financial inclusion. So this is from the point of business, but from the point of production and from point of development, what can we make of these numbers? Think about that. Something else, Africa provides a conducive environment for foreign investment. Around 2.4 billion US dollars worth of capital was deployed in African startups in 2020. 30% of companies that closed the top 10 deals by size across the continent were incorporated outside Africa. So you have a lot of funding coming into Africa, but these companies are not incorporated in Africa. And if you look at the unicorn startups in the continent, I work with startups and social entrepreneurs, a large chunk of them have got foreign co-founders. Think about that. In 2019, 8 amongst the top 10 African startups received the highest amount of venture capital in the continent, and they were led by foreigners. In the same year, the market capitalization for mega investment deals coupled by non-African founders in Nigeria and South Africa was about 45%, while in Kenya, 94% of startups that received more than 1 million US dollars were led by non-Africans. That is a report that was published by The Guardian. So the question is, where is the African youth in all these opportunities within the continent? Think about that. When it comes to social innovation, so we've talked about public policy, I've talked about entrepreneurship. When it comes to social innovation, the world is faced by complex challenges right now. Some can be predicted of the future. We see the floods right now. Why are the floods happening? Is it because of poor drainage only? Definitely no. There's an aspect of climate change involved in the floodings. Yesterday I was talking to my mom. She lives in Kisumu. And Kisumu near the lake area is known to have a lot of floods. And I remember in 2020, there was the largest, the biggest floods that had ever been experienced since 40 years ago. And the reason for that was the rising water levels in the lake. And yesterday when I was talking to her, I asked her, why is it that I don't see in the news issues of flooding in Kisumu region? And she told me right now it's not flooding here. People have not moved, but it's happening in Nairobi. It's happening around here. So the question is, why? It's not just poor drainage. There's a problem of climate change. And this is one of the complex challenges that the continent is facing. I've not talked about issues of garbage, clean water, sanitation, health. There's a myriad of complex societal or social issues that Africa is faced with. And this is why social innovation is important. And so we need to find ways of working together, not only in specialized institutions as an engineer or as an accountant, but multidisciplinarily to address some of these complex challenges. And I won't go into design thinking training process. Those ones who have attended our design thinking training cohorts understand what I mean when I talk about social innovation training. And so a focus on questions rather than answers is the key to developing solutions when it comes to social innovation. So innovation is imperative to solving the majority of Africa's most pressing needs, and we have to find proven methodologies, testable ones, apply them, and iterate these solutions. And this has to happen at the local level, and that is why Kectil will be moving from county to county, talking to young people, engaging young people at the local level, and collecting all these ideas, conducting all these trainings, so that we can find as many solutions as possible to these challenges that we face, coming from young people themselves. So with all that thought-provoking comments, I don't know whether you've been provoked, I'm assuming. I'm assuming you've been provoked to think, and I'm hoping that you'll engage the panelists with questions. I want to officially launch the Kectil 2024 program. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's actually very interesting to see these young faces here, and you're talking about the things that you actually relate with when you talk about entrepreneurship, innovation, and just things that can help to bring solution to the complexities that Mr. Wycliffe Gugoni talked about. It's actually very nice to see young people, trying to come up with solutions that are actually going to bring change and move us to the next level. So without saying much, I want to take us to the next level where we're going to have the panel discussion. So the panel discussion is on youth participation in public policy. Mr. Wycliffe Gugoni already set the pace when he was doing his introduction, and he actually mentioned something about public policy, and it's not a new language, not something that you're interacting with for the first time. And I know you're all pleased when you hear public policy because you have the content to have us discuss it. It's going to be a very interactive session. We are going to have Ebenezer Amadi instead to be the moderator of this discussion.
Our discussion today is around participation of the youth in public policy, and we want to understand who the panelists are, and also getting to know about them more before we deep dive into the conversation. So let me start with Sankara. Tell us a little bit more about you. When I had the name Sankara, there's one building close here, so I don't know if you own the place or, tell us more.
Hello, everyone. How are you? So I'm Sankara Gitao. No, I don't own the building. I hope one day my name will be said somewhere and nobody will confuse me for the building or think about the building. Think about Sankara, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso. That's towards the direction. So I think today I sit here in my capacity as someone who was recently young, and also as someone who's a youth leader, someone who's worked with a lot of young people, and also as a parent who has young children. So I sit here as someone that wants to be able to not only govern, but to also see better governance. And I'm sure some other remarks will come as we proceed. But thank you so much for offering us your time, your ears, your mind, and your insight. Asante.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Very interesting about your name. So you talk about Sankara Thomas. We have a chain of hotels, and you talk about the other bit. So you said recently youth. So I'm really trying to break down that statement, because according to the African Charter, let me get there, because he talked about the number of youth that are in the world. I think the population in Africa is about 1.4 billion, right? Total number of youth in the world is about, is about 1.2 billion. Basically means that the youth are equivalent in the world. I mean, if you take everyone and disaggregate them into age and take the youth, they can fit in Africa. So that's the power that the youth are having. If you look at it from that context, just visualizing it where the youth would fit. So the African Charter says between 18 to 35.
Yes.
But the Kenyan Constitution talks about 18 to 34. I don't know if
Yes.
the politicians wanted to add one more year to themselves to be called youth. So what do you mean by recently youth?
I think when you're in Kenya, you always get to round off to the nearest 50. So I think in Kenya it's a little different.
It's a little different.
But we're definitely above the African Union Charter's definition, the UN definition.
Yeah.
And we're above that age limit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But at least you can give us your insights.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So welcome. Let's appreciate Sarah Sankara for joining us today. Let's move on to Isaac Chibole. Tell me if I pronounce it correctly or wrong. But let's hear about who is Isaac.
Okay, thank you so much. For one, you've pronounced it well. Thank you for doing that. People usually have an issue. Why? I don't understand. But yeah, I'm Isaac Chibole. And whenever I'm told to define myself, the first thing that comes to mind is servant. I think probably because of my economics background, I'm always thinking in terms of utility. And so I like to think of myself as someone who endeavors to use their intellectual capabilities, financial where available, and even just humane capabilities to bring value to those around me and to build each other. So yeah, that's what I am in terms of my definition of myself. And I'm also an energy and climate action analyst in a consultancy firm. And I hold various servant positions in youth-led organizations. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. Thank you so much, Isaac. Let's appreciate Isaac for joining us today. I think probably the reason why people get confused with your name is that, even when I looked at it for the first time, I don't know why I was going to say Chiloba. But it's Chibole, so I think it's just because the mind playing tricks on us. But thank you so much, Isaac. You stay away from the comments, okay. Ballots, okay. But you're talking about participation, so a very key element that will link us again back to the ballots. So you will not run away from it. Let's also appreciate Ayan Kanan. For joining us. Let us know a little bit who is Ayan Kanan. Looking at it, I almost felt like it's a tongue twister, but it's a beautiful name in itself as well.
Thank you. So my name is Ayan Kanan. I am an IoT engineer. I build smart utilities for Africa. That means that we technically build smart devices and okay, I would not want to go so deeply technical, but yeah, we build smart utilities for Africa. So things like smart water meters, smart grid meters, M-gas. I know some of you have used M-gas. Yeah, and much more. So I'm in the tech space, and I have been in the tech space for a while. Yeah.
Nice, really good. So you said you're an engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite interesting because I think engineers will really gloat about their profession and really go technical, but you're telling us, let's not go too technical. I was waiting for you to give us a technical bit, but quite interesting. Let's also appreciate Ayan Kanan for joining us today. So let me begin with Sankara. So this is just like an open conversation. I don't have questions with me. In fact, what I'm looking at is a poster of these three panelists. But I just wanted to have a conversation. And what this helps is that we don't have any prepared questions for the panelists, so we don't have a guided conversation, but also throw it back to you to ask some questions in terms of youth participation in public policy. So what do you think about the youth in general? Let's begin with Kenya. But let me backtrack a little bit, just starting on what is public policy. What is from there? So before we move to youth participating in public policy.
Okay, thank you. So, public policy, I think it depends with the context. Some people will say that public policy is written and it's enshrined in the constitutions. Others will say public policy is every single thing that concerns a citizen, whether they are old or young or middle-aged. From where I see it and from what I see, I think public policy is the participation of every single person in how governance is conducted. And this is governance across all sectors, be it health, be it education, be it social affairs, every single space you could think of, including diversity.
That's really interesting. So don't worry, I will not be following this line and going back. I'll just be random. Let's go back to Ayan. Ayan, so she spoke about the definition of public policy, right? In terms of how we are able to contribute to how the government governs the country. But I'm thinking to myself, beyond the youth, what do you think is the participation of women? So youth, do I call them women or ladies? You can guide me. Ladies who are youth. So you tell me to be careful. Ladies who are youth, what is their participation in, what do you feel is their current participation in public policy?
I would say it's moderate, just like everybody else. I think women have come up as, a lot more young women have come up as activists, and with that we're able to see more women championing for education, for women's rights, for girls in ICT, and we've seen so much happening of late. Personally, I think apart from Tony, every other activist I've met is a lady. So I think we need more men activists in this case. But still, when we talk about underprivileged and part of the underprivileged people, it's women and children who suffer most. So with that, I do understand why women, young ladies, come up to become really bold and really loud about policies, participating in strategy documents, bills, writing bills, etc. So technically, I think in the policy-making space, we need more men joining.
We need more men. So you asked about, you talked about activists, and something just went to my mind. Are you an activist? Would you consider yourself an activist?
No, I'm not an activist, but I'm a close supporter of youth and young, youth and women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm also seeing an intersection between so participation of, because again, when you talk about activists, access to technology, especially with the influencers, because you mentioned that, in terms of advocating for matters, environment, stuff like that. So we see an increase of young people also engaging in, talking about climate change more so, talking about droughts some time back. Of course, we know the private sector was very keen in trying to support the public that were facing hunger. And now we have the rains, so heavy rains, and we have floods, right? So we're seeing actually the youth coming on to participate. So do you think access to technology is contributing to more the youth participating rather than coming to physical meetings?
Yes, I do think technology is quite key in mobilization. Currently, I think we have a lot of social spaces which have been closely supported by technology spaces. So things like even the app X that was built by engineers, it's there to support free speech, it's there to support activism, and ideally sort of like a truthful social media where you get community nodes. So all these are features that engineers have enabled us have, and that's why without technology, I don't think our voices would be heard. Yeah, without technology, we won't have our voices heard. Yeah, so that's the summary.
Yeah, really interesting. Isaac, Ian Kanan came up with a statement and said we need more men in terms of pushing for an agenda for the country. What is your reaction to that?
First of all, I don't know if you asked them those questions because they are ladies specifically or because you just wanted to know. Because
It was a random question. Random question. So
okay, I'd love to comment first on the question you asked them before
Awesome.
coming to mine. And so, with my little experience in matters of grassroots and high-level policy making, noted that women involvement is fairly significant. I'm actually deliberately avoiding the word high, right? This is mainly because I use personal examples at the risk of people who I'm talking about knowing it. But I have 3 mentors who, in terms of policy, teach me something, right? 2 of them are ladies, and both the ladies are much more experienced in matters of public policy making than the guy, right? And in my experience also in going to grassroots with things like public participation, like for the county fiscal strategy paper for Nairobi County, County Integrated Development Plan. When I was there, nilikuwa huko kama mtu wa mkono, right? And I noted that women's participation was not just big numerically, but in terms of the passion and understanding of the ideas, and the focus on advocating for certain objectives. It was ferocious, right? Like, you would hear a lady, okay, I'm not going to use the word woman again, lady is the word. You'll hear a lady at the grassroots, you're there trying to figure out which project the county government should carry out for a certain sub-county, right? And you're there thinking, this place doesn't have a bridge. People are having problems crossing from this one end to the other end. The means being used are unsafe, right? So because you've quote-unquote studied economics, you think you know something, right? But no, you don't. This lady will tell you, okay, we need to cross that bridge, but first, where the children live, it's already unsafe for them. So let's not even talk about them crossing the bridge to go to school or anywhere else. Where they stay is already, it's dangerous, right? So I think their participation, from what I've felt personally, is fairly significant, and I only think it's going to grow. As for the participation of men, I don't know if it's declining because they've found better things to do, or because they have been outcompeted, or because they are apathetic to it. We will find that out.
So would you what's the link between that with the research that says for every 20,000 words a lady speaks, probably a man will use half of that?
Enlighten me, I haven't understood you entirely.
Yeah, so basically they say averagely in a day, a lady will express herself in using 20,000 words. And a man probably will averagely use 7,000 to 10,000 words. Is there a correlation between the two and participation in public policy?
Not necessarily. It's good for sensationalization, but not necessarily. Precisely because policy making is about identification of problems, then agenda setting around solving those problems before we now start, articulating the solutions and presenting them to implementation bodies, right? And for those, the criteria, I believe, is not how many words are used, right? The criteria is not how many words are used, but the context and the accuracy of the policy recommendation being put forward. So, for instance, I come and say, as a man, I want to use 10 words, and say people here are losing their lives at a rate higher than a war zone, right? And then someone else comes and says, uses 500 words to say that we need more conducive space for us to sit. We want all these tiles carpeted red, right? We want all that stuff. Just because they've used more words doesn't mean that, the quality or the relevance of that policy solution or recommendation beats the one who's used few words. So when it comes to policy, it's purely about the direct correlation between the problem identified and the relevant solutions to solve it and the availability of resources to solve it. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going back with your statements and saying that it's all about identifying the problem and finding the solution. So I'm trying to find the relationship between non-participation by men in policy, but still looking at the youth category, right? So how with so you say women or ladies are the participation is significant. So how can we also engage men, or also youth, to participate in these conversations?
Okay, so when assessing the matter, I am brought to think that the disparities in involvement of men and women could be because of either the increased participation by women could be because of affirmative actions taken, which means that there is a conscientious, right, effort to participate. People's attention are called to it and they understand the importance, right? And maybe for the longest time, men's participation might not have been driven by that. It may have been driven by the need for certain actions to be taken, right? So when it comes to a point where ladies' participation is increasing because of affirmative action and they're deliberate and intentional about the involvement, that vacuum previously that existed that pushed a man to, participate because it has to be done, I think that's where the disparity occurs.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, it's about all now taking the same approach, not necessarily for affirmative action, but calling men to also conscientiously participate. Like objectively.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think I can use that logic. So let's go back to Sankara. So we talked about the participation of women, participation of men. So looking at that, so using the gender lens. I want to use the youth lens. What would you say is the participation of the youth in public policy for starters? And then we can move forward to see, based on their participation, what needs to be improved.
Okay. So first of all, we had a stereotype right here on this podium. That was that women use a lot of words versus men use a few words, isn't it? And you gave a good example.
Was this a stereotype? I was referring to some data.
Just give me a minute. I'm going somewhere. Trust me. Trust me.
Okay.
So he started to give an example and he said that maybe perhaps hypothetically we say people are dying at a high rate, isn't it? Then the next thing he said was, what if we came here and we said we want tiles, we want a carpet, and we want a what? I was hoping how that statement would end would be that men would say, people here are dying at a high rate. And a woman will come and say, people here are dying at a high rate because we do not have A, B, C, D. So what women tend to do is, women will expound on the issue. Men do not expound. Yeah? I don't want to get into English, but if you think about a primary sentence versus a secondary sentence and what one does to the other, you get the drift. Now, let's come to your question. Young people. So while Guguni was talking, there's something he asked, and he asked, where are the young people? And it's a very important question because the way young people in this country work is not complicated. We know where young people are. We see them every day. You are young people. We are young people, isn't it? So the question is, why are young people not productive? So why don't we have a lot of young people being able to not only articulate the problems or the issues that we are going through, and coherently for that matter, then using our voices to actually speak in spaces and forums that matter. So I do think that young people have an opportunity to not only become consumers, but to also become producers. And these are producers of not only problems, but then also solutions. So I think that it's not that young people do not participate. They participate. If you go to X, if you go on TikTok, I'm not sure about Snapchat. I'm not sure Snapchat even allows you to do a lot, actually. But anyway, let's go with X, yeah? Let's do a little bit of TikTok. Young people...
I was about to tell you that the other brackets assume these two social media platforms. Facebook and X are for old people. So they tend to use other platforms. And I think I just had a conversation and I asked someone, are you on Facebook? Then they looked at me, it's like, why would I be on Facebook if my parent is on Facebook? So, it was a very interesting conversation. So, I mean, yeah, just proceed on.
Okay. So what I was saying is that if you look at X, think about TikTok, we have a lot of young people on those platforms. Those are the people that make issues trend. They make people trend, yeah? Given or granted that the tense and the approach and the tone of X is not the same as that one on TikTok for sure. But you can easily tell that people who are young in this country know what the problem is. If someone is going to go and see a photo, for example, of a forklift trying to empty water that's flooded on a highway, and they actually realize that that's a problem, and that's a young person, that's not someone that's clueless. So young people know exactly what to do. They know exactly where to get in. The question is why. So I would like to think and sort of even begin to even conduct even research and have data. Why do young people not get involved in active governance? Young people do not vote. Very few young people vote. We had more people in 2022 than we did in the previous election, but it was only by about, I think, maybe 1,000 or a little lower than 1,000. So why are young people not voting? Right now, if you think about it, we have people who are in Form 4, right? High school. These guys are going to come out and they're going to find whatever new scandal we are going to have, because every day Kenya is not for beginners. So we have a scandal every other time. They'll hope on each and every scandal, and towards the point when it is election time, who will they elect? Because they're going to get IDs, isn't it? Who are they going to elect? So I think we have a very big gap with regards to productivity and young people. And also, what are the incentives? How do we incentivize young people to actually participate in active governance or in public policy, or even not just running for office, yeah? And even to sort of point out to what my fellow panelists were talking about around women and young people. I don't think governance has to be sexually disaggregated. I don't think we even have to talk about females and males and, and the other genders. I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to actively find the solution to getting young people to participate at places where it matters.
Okay, really interesting. So when you talked about production and productivity, my mind was going elsewhere in terms of what the young people do. So I think to some extent they are productive, but probably they are putting their energy in different sectors. Because I was just thinking, someone who is a content creator, they really put work into it, because you have to stick to a schedule. You must prepare in advance the content you're going to post. And then you will need to schedule it. And you also need to schedule different activities. For example, you're thinking, where am I going to market? So I need to be in town probably by 9 a.m. Probably you're trying to close a deal with Coke to be able to market their product. So you're going for a marketing meeting. So they actually, if you look at it, they actually quite organize or plan themselves well. but probably in certain spaces then you fail to see them. But I'm also thinking to myself, probably, Isaac, do you think that the problem could be that the older guys, when they see the young people, they judge them first of all by age before they get to the content? For example, I've always been getting this comment, and that is why I always have my rugged hair. And I don't think there is any, all the interviews I've gone to, I always had in fact, the previous day I go to the barber and I tell them a nice clean mohawk before I go to the interview. So I think all the interviews that I've gone to, I've always had a mohawk. So, and then when you sit on the table in a board meeting with people, so judgingly someone looks at your hairstyle and then saying, hello, we're happy to have young people in the meeting. Or they are calling you, oh, hello, young man. So every time a person will refer to me either by age or by looks in terms of where I lie and call me young man, I know this guy doesn't have content. So he's trying to use his age and the upper to be more on the upper hand in having a conversation with me instead of tabling the content that they have. So with what you mentioned, I'm just trying to pull this to give context to Isaac. Do you think that's a contributor? Because I don't think young people lack a say. Like you just said, someone looked at the forklift and quickly will say, I mean, why are you coming in the forklift? I'm presuming you should have come with an ambulance because people were drowning, right? Probably you come with some blankets or a shade because it is raining, right? Logical things. So actually the forklift was parked. I saw the video. The forklift was parked on top of a bridge, right? It was doing nothing, just probably you can take nice pictures, but I didn't see it doing anything. So Isaac, what do you think is the influence of making young people not really participate?
Okay, thank you. How many economists do we have here today? Anyone who studied economics? I can see one, but he's definitely deliberately ignoring, but it's fine. Anyway, I asked that to ask or rather to say, the main challenge, as per me, is asymmetry of information. That's a term that's in economics, and it's usually used to describe the interaction between a producer and a consumer, a seller and a buyer, right? It's used to say that when, as a buyer, you are buying something, you don't have full information of it. You can see the quality, the visible quality superficially. You can see the date written there. But the only person who really knows all the attributes of that product you're purchasing is the producer, right? They are the only ones who know if they've stated that it will last for 1 year, but due to how it's been made, it will last for 3 months. That's called asymmetry of information. And so in interactions between the older generation and the younger generation, as pertains to policy making, again, that asymmetry, manifests itself in the sense that policy making is like negotiation. It's basically negotiation, because at the end of the day, there's no solution that's usually perfect that you'll just implement in an ecosystem full of many actors and it will work perfectly. It will upset balances here and there. And so the biggest challenge with the youth is that we go into that negotiation of policy making without knowing the leverage we hold. You see, like you are describing, you are being told young man, and it's, the silent annotation is that I've been around longer than you and I've been doing this longer than you, and so probably, I know much more than you, right? The youth also, when we go into those engagements, we do not actively think of our leverage point. The fact that because we are younger, because we have less experience, it means we understand exactly the dynamics of the current world, and you are able to tell the differences between the current world and the past one. That's our main point of leverage. For example, when we were having that discussion about taxation on digital creators, right? okay, I have to tread carefully. I might not be very persuaded to assume that the older professional in a high placed position in government understands that for a YouTube creator, for them to start earning money, they have to get to a certain number of subscribers, right? They might not know that. They might not know that there's something that exists called monetization. You have to monetize the channel first, right? That's something that only the youth knows. And so when they come into a policy-making discussion, since they know what they have that the older generation doesn't have, they should be aware of it so that they can present it. Once you present it, it will be clear that, that symbiotism will be developed. This other person will recognize that you do know something, a variable involved in policy making that will be useful to them and that they can't do without, but only you possess it, so they need you, right? And the conversation now becomes more respectful. So I think that's the main challenge, asymmetry of information. You are going there into the discussion room, you look down upon yourself, you think you don't know much, but really, your biggest advantage is just who you are. The fact that you are young, the fact that you are inexperienced, the fact that you don't know much, but you know now, right? You know what's there now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. I like what you use in terms of asymmetry of information. And it's the same thing, same logic that business people use, right? For example, my dad used to own a supermarket. And it would be really funny for me. So someone is coming in, and then on the shelf, probably we didn't do the stock checking correctly. And then the product isn't on the shelf, right? But the customer is a loyal customer, so comes to the shop every day and notices there's no one product. So as they're continuing to do their shopping, they will say, okay, there's no duck, so when are you going to stock it next? Then you're like, in the next 5 minutes, we'll have it. So if you can go around, do your shopping, we'll bring it, right? Around the corner, we know that there's a wholesale, but the customer doesn't know that there's a wholesale around the corner, right? So we'll make the call to the wholesale. It's like, we need 5 cartons of ducks, which is, of course, when you're selling, you have to buy cheap and sell with a margin, right? So just around the corner, the guy will bring the 5 cartons and we'll put it on the shelf with a price tag, and the customer will pick it. So since the customer does not know where to get the product in wholesale, we go get it, put it on the shelf, they buy it at a price. So that's a symmetry of information, meaning that the information is skewed towards us because we know where the sellers are, and we can bring, and that's a logic of a supermarket, because the supermarket is supposed to help you to bring all these products. Morning, Mr. CEO. You're doing well? Karibu sana. Sorry. Okay, I was under one roof, right? Like Nakumat said, all under one. That was their tagline, right? Basically meaning that if you step into Nakumat, the thinking was that you should find most of the products there. And that's why people went to shop at Nakumat. But of course, using where you like to get most of your products. So using that, Ayan, what do you think could be made different or easier for the youth to participate? Because, of course, he spoke about the ability for the youth to know the current trends. That's their strength, right? And different things like, for example, he used the term to how to monetize the social media platforms. The old guys don't know how to do that. Actually, they have to hire someone to help them monetize their platform, right? So what do you think should be made, or what do we need to do to engage the youth more?
What do we need to engage the youth?
You spoke about the asymmetry information, so I'm beginning from there. Is it that they are lacking in information, or is it that the ability for them to express themselves or know that they have a strength in terms of visualizing the current trends and using that to relay the information in terms of changing policy? So what will that thing be? Is it one or two or three things?
So let me just start by Sankara's comment about young people not being so productive. I think even in terms of involvement of the youth, we've seen how the country is moving, and we've seen how the current state of the matter is. And so I would say there's that slight giving up that is, that slight vibe of giving up that is happening. Because like we've kept speaking about the same things over and over and over again. But if you look at even governance itself, nothing changes. Yeah. If you look at, for example, the housing policy, the finance bill by itself, there are so many things that we were against, but still, it was still passed. So how is a youth's voice supposed to help? And in any case, will a youth's voice be able to stop corruption or be able to make the country better? I think in essence, we need to be more receptive of youth and their opinions. We've been in spaces where we've talked, we've had meetings like this.
Is it the battery or?
So just to touch on it, yeah, the guys who are above 35 were once youth, and they spoke about these issues again and again and again. But we are not. Nothing is going to change until we get a top-down approach where the government creates spaces for youth to engage and upholds their opinions. And I know they're nominated. There's nominated slots for youth in this country, but still, how are two youth slots supposed to how are they supposed to be vocal about youth affairs? Youth affairs are still everybody's affairs. We forget that youth affairs is still everybody's affairs. So what the youth is just trying to voice out is the problems that we all face. And I think, yes, the problems that face youths much more, like unemployment and all of that. But essentially, if you look at all the problems we face as youth, everybody else faces them. And they're very small, unique differences. Maybe we're gonna speak about the extent as to how unemployment affects the youth, yeah? Or we're going to speak about how is finance bill going to help the youth get houses or whatever, yeah? So essentially, I think it needs to boil down to, are there spaces for young people to speak and to contribute? That's all. If youth are given a space, they'll obviously take up that space. They'll do much, much more.
Okay. Makes more sense, but as you spoke, I mean, I also thought about, I mean, you mentioned that, let's say, 2 slots, what will they do? But I'm also thinking, what difference does a youth make when they get into parliament or they get these spaces? Is it just that in human nature something changes and then we focus more on ourselves? Because I think I've seen the youth who have been quite vocal and probably have gone through youth participation, probably got a position of influence, and they just keep quiet and now they're focusing on themselves. So is it just human nature, or so that before you got into power, you were really advocating for these things? Ama watasema table manners. Sasa leo unakula utaji kelele. What do you say, Isaac?
Sorry, can I answer part of that question? I think it's a matter of not having enough voices. It's not a matter of who is there, because we have brilliant youth. An example is nominated MP Umul Khair. I think she's doing quite amazing. She sponsored so many bills, including one that supports the deaf. And by the way, she has also created a lot of opportunities for youth to be had, yeah, including nominating some of the youth to sit in boards such as the EU, yeah, such as the World Bank Board, etc. And so when we're speaking of the youth, yes, two youth can only do so much, but their voices sunk under all the rest of the voices. So,
Okay.
yeah, back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I was quite worried that that question will pass by me without me answering. It's like, you know, the most exciting questions you're asking.
We will not miss
else.
you.
But anyway, yeah, so mine, recently meaning anywhere between the past 2 years and 1 year, I've been a strong believer and peddler of this narrative that we need to look at the youth constituency as a resource rather than a beneficiary of interventions. And I say that because as much as there's a lot to be done by the outside actors, including government and leaders and whatnot, I feel like we have still not yet exploited the full potential of the youth as a resource unto themselves. Quick example to just explain that. The first shilling I ever made didn't come from, you know, a hunch from my dad or my parent or my mentor or anyone. It came from my friend, my high school desk mate, who we went to the same university together. And after school, we started looking for money the same way, right? It was from my youth. And whoever he connected me to was also a youth, right? And that pattern, I found myself in an ecosystem of like 50 youth who are very highly productive without any involvement of a senior person, right? The same applies to even these engagements right here. I'm so glad when I see people actually recognizing the value of such programs and showing up. There's so much that we know in between ourselves. I'll give another example at risk of that person knowing I'm talking about them. Somebody told me that, Isaac, I need to find an attachment opportunity, industrial attachment opportunity. And I was like, I know this particular firm that's quite fitting, or rather your specific skill fits here quite nicely. Like you will be a star when you come over here because of the uniqueness and the value of your experience and expertise. They were like, okay, great. So send me your CV. That's always what I say. And I usually tell people, I'm not telling you to send me your CV so that I can give you a job. I want to correct it first. And I always know there's something to correct. This person is an energy engineer, right? But when they sent me their one-page CV, it never went beyond saying they're an energy engineer. They didn't talk about mini-grids. They didn't talk about off-grid solutions. They didn't talk about on-grid solutions, the gaps and how they aim to solve that and whatever. I work with them in our youth organization. They've done a lot of work for us. We've worked together, but they never mentioned it. At the workplace, aliandika jina ya shule, now that they are students there, right? And I'm so sorry he knows. Their hobby section was longer, right? And now here's the tricky part. The hobby section was longer, but it contained some of the information that should have come under the work experience. Right? Very serious issues. But once someone scans, someone who doesn't have time, once they scan the top part, they abandon that, right? But there's more to be done. So I say that to say, okay, it's fine if we keep on also targeting for the bigger solutions, but let's recognize each other as very potentially productive resources that we can use. Let's exploit all this potential. Be able to write your CV as greatly as, you know, the CEO of Ecobana can do, right? You know, be able to dress as well as any other person can do. be able to do all those things. By the time you are getting there, you won't even feel like there is a gap between you, that older policymaker, and you. You'll find that all that you ever needed was in your youth constituency. You just had to exhaust it first. After that, you won't even feel like these guys have anything on you. Yeah.
Interesting. So, in short, what you have said, the youth work on a content, lakini wajui kuipanga. Interesting. So let's get some questions. So I think I have about 6 minutes. I think the MC will be coming to snatch the mic from me. Before I do that, I see one hand there, second hand there, third hand there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rhyme Matthew Njuguna. Listening to the speakers, this is Sankara, Isaac, and Ayan. I love the sentiments you've been able to share with us, and especially the symmetry of information that Chibole pointed out. I almost said Chiloba. Chibole pointed out, and it's quite new information for me. And as you've said, just listening to you, I've come to think, and probably this is a question I'll pose to everyone in this room. I think we as youth already have this information. We live in an age of information, excess information. There are opportunities, but as also the gentleman behind us, sorry, I forgot your name, Wycliffe pointed out, I think he mentioned that 94% of the investment that is done in Africa, and also this comes to the policy relating it, 94% of the investment done in Africa is not by Africans, and it goes offshore. And it's quite saddening, yet we already have this information. And just to pose the question, is it a cultural issue that we have as youth, that we are not supporting each other as youth, or is it, I wouldn't say it's an information problem, but is it a cultural problem that we have brought up from observing our leaders, our elderly leaders, and we are also adopting, and how can we be able to work through that?
Okay, mine is not really a question. So I'd love to first of all reiterate what Sankara said. I really loved the fact that you said that youth governance is not gendered, because this is actually a topic I'm very passionate about. And when it comes to the question on why youth get to spaces of influence and then seem to kind of back down, I think we need to. Okay, I don't think they really back down, but I think they need more mentorship, they need more coaching in regards to such matters, because when we think about youth governance, we also have to think about the youth in marginalized areas. Let's not, let's not box ourselves to, the youth in Nairobi, because we also need to think about the youths living in marginalized areas, or those that come from marginalized communities that do not have equal opportunities to participate in youth governance as those living in Nairobi, for instance, right? So I think with more mentorship, with more coaching, then many more youth will be able to take up spaces in youth governance. Thank you.
I happen to be a youth officer in my sub-county, and I usually ask, how do youths want to be incentivized? Because apparently we have a challenge when you try to bring them the knowledge that we tell them the knowledge is what you're giving you back. They tell us no, we have more problems than the information you're giving unto us. So how do the youths want to be incentivized so that they can participate in the youth the issues? The second question is on the leverage. Apparently, we've had a problem in the State Department of Youth and Youth Sports Affairs. The youths, they are not able to articulate issues. And now you're asking, how can we empower these young people to become more articulate in their issues? Because apparently, sometimes I'm discouraged to put people on some of the committees, the youths, because apparently they will become more emotional than logic when it comes to handling issues, and they start reasoning with their own, with the pocket instead of the mind. So, how can we now mentor these young people to be able to articulate the issues without becoming the money mentality that is killing most of the initiatives that are happening between the government and the youths themselves? Yeah, thank you.
Hello, hi guys. My name is Lorraine Whitney Aching, and my question goes to Sankara. Generalizing, you said that the youth do not know the leverage that they have, right? And that's why most of them maybe do not come out because they don't know the kind of leverage that they have in the government. So my question is, the youths in the rural areas, let alone the ones in Nairobi, the youths in the rural areas who don't have the resources to come to such events, and they are brilliant and they're smart, how can you reach them? How can we go into them and give them chances to come to such forums?
So I think we had some good questions coming in. A comment from Waraguru Muredi, noting that, I mean, the youth deserve more mentorship, which is quite interesting. And then the gentleman had a question saying that most of the 94% of the investment, quoting Guguni, are led by non-Africans. So is this a cultural issue? Then I had the gentleman talk about what do youth need in terms of incentivizing them to participate. Because, and again, he also spoke about the lack of ability to articulate themselves, and they're more emotional than logical. So how are you able to solve that? And then Doreen spoke about the youth not knowing their leverage. And I think she began with the question, are we generalizing that, and how do we reach to the people who are in what we call marginalized areas? So I'll let each one of you address any question that you feel you would want to address from those. Let's start with Sankara.
Thank you. I think those are such excellent questions. Allow me to start with the question on public participation in rural areas, or even call them hard to reach populations, yeah? So these are spaces, I'm thinking about Samburu, I'm thinking about Turkana, I'm thinking about Marsabit, Isiolo. These are spaces where actually, even constitutionally, they are given a lot more money to actually manage those counties than other counties. Yet within those spaces, we never hear the voices, not even of young people, even of people, right? Like, it's very few people. And interestingly, I think just maybe yesterday, I saw a clip from someone who is actually living either in Isiolo or Marsabit, and they were calling out their leaders, talking about how their leaders are living in the city, etc., yet, so it's as though when they get into government, they're moving away from the life that they used to have. So now they're in the dream, right? And it's like dream ni kutoka kwa block, si ndio? So akishatoka kwa block, anasahau watu wenye aligrow na wao, anasahau classmates, and lucky your first dime came from your friend. But I think we have to be innovative. How we approach public participation has to be innovative. How we approach any sector of society has to be innovative. Government actually, the budget, look at the CIDPs, yeah? Think at the national government budgets. There's actually allocations for public participation. Your governor, your MCA, your MP, your women rep, your senator, is supposed to be thinking about ways to actually make sure that public participation is happening. Earlier today, I was thinking, during COVID, did we have any public participation? Because the way I see it, a lot of our government officials had a reason to not involve the public in making decisions, whether it was on the things they were deciding to do, whether it was on the policies, whether it was on how they were spending the money. So I think that we have to find innovative ways. I'll say, I tend to talk a lot. I'm really trying. But I want to give you an example. My daughter is here. She's like, yeah, mom. But anyway, so I want to give an example of an innovation that we came up with while I was working with an organization around education. As I was doing my field work in Samburu and Turkana, I realized that in as much as we have cultural reasons why young girls don't go to school, the people, rather the gatekeepers, think about the elders, this is the males, yeah, who say, my daughter will not go to school. It is not because they don't want them to get educated. A majority of the time, their reasons are very different. When you've already been beaded, yeah, and you have all these beautiful beads that a lot of us like to wear, actually they have very bad meanings within the community, but anyway, when we want to wear all those beads and we see young girls who have been beaded, it's because they've been booked, isn't it? So when they're booked, the father or the boyfriend or the brother, whoever it is that's within that space that's a male, decides that if this girl goes to school, there's an opportunity that she might be spotted by someone else. Also, if she's always going to be a wife, why are we even taking her to school anyway? You get what I mean? You get where I'm going. So what we decided to do was to actually take education in the Manyata. And the elders said, if you teach the girls in the Manyata, we have no problem. So then it meant that we had to come up with an innovative solution to make sure that the girls were still learning within the Manyatas, isn't it? So in a context like that, as we all know, you don't take economics, yeah? You don't teach biochemistry, you don't teach crazy things. You only teach numeracy skills and oratory skills, yeah? Because while in the Manyata, they're allowed to own goats, they're allowed to, I want to say like, I don't know the word, you know, like when they process aloe vera, they're allowed to do that. And they go sell a 5-liter jerry can at 300 shillings. How much are you buying pure aloe vera from Healthy You? Yet that's where it's coming from. So when you teach them some of these skills in a way that is easy and it's simple, then they know we should actually not be selling our 5-liter jerry cans at 300 bob. So at that, if you think about it like that, there's access to education at a particular point. So I think that we just have to be very innovative around how we are doing it. Because we are not governors, or I'm not a governor and I'm not a senator and I'm not in government, what do I do as an individual who has already seen these things on the ground and I'm seeing that these things are not being considered everywhere else? I use my voice. So I use my voice to advocate. Advocate, and my fellow panelist started off by saying she was asked and she said she's not an advocate. But I believe that she's not an activist. For you to become an activist, you do not need to be 1, famous, 2, to have even good grammar, 3, to even have a following. For you to become an activist, you just need to identify an issue and say something about it at the right place. That's all you need to do. Yeah? So for those of us who've been to these spaces and we've seen all these inequalities, we've seen all these indifferences, we just have to use our voices. Then lastly, resources. I want to quickly say that I love what he said around him being connected by a young person to another young person, and then you sort of begin to feel as though the ecosystem that you exist within just has young people, isn't it? In this room, think next election. What if this was the next parliament? Everyone in this room is seated in parliament. Everyone in this room is representing a particular community or a particular county. What would that look like? We need to start looking at each other as resources, as networks. We have a guy in the audience, Kip, who's very silent over there. This guy is a resource, and he's a young guy, yeah? So we just need to be able to know how we tap into each other, you know, and to also have an opportunity, you know, if we say that old people don't believe in young people, how about young people believing in young people? We don't even need to have even 50% of young people in parliament for things to move in this country. The young people outside are more. Those young people outside can actually support the few who are on the inside. But we keep quiet. We're the ones who continue to perpetuate stories and rumors and stories about them online. So we just need to change. I think we all have to rise internally and introspectively. I think we all have to address ourselves in a manner that allows for us to actually exist in a better society.
Awesome. That's it's an interesting closure, and I've been told the space that we were being given to type the words, we have exceeded the words, the limit of the words. In fact, I've received an email from our MC saying that the mic will be taken from me any minute from now. So I will ask Isaac and Ayan just to give you final thoughts, 1 minute each.
Okay, thank you. Sankara, you are saying you talk a lot. You haven't met me, but I'll go to my brother's question right there on what the issue is, whether it's cultural or whatever. And personally, I believe you people don't believe in yourselves. Even the ones who think they do, the most confident ones, don't believe in themselves as much as they think they do, because there's so much you can do. I remember the other day, randomly, I was doing a research for something, and part of the research materials I was using, I stumbled upon some analysis I had done last year on a very random project, and it's part of our national strategy. I won't say which one because I don't want to, get in trouble, but it shows that you don't have to be exceptionally intelligent or to be exceptionally, connected or what, provided you are on the right path. And that's what I insist on. The software that runs you, what is it? What's your mindset? How do you go about life? What's your ecosystem like? The people around you, right? Are they resourceful? Are they forward-looking? Are they going to inspire you more? The other day, a friend of mine, I was complaining to him. I said, we got on this plane and sijui nilikuwa nasikia turbulence na masikio ya nyuma. Akaambia, bro, you went on a small plane, right? So the big ones don't have that problem. I say that to say because he was a friend who tulikuwa tunalala njaa naye campus, right? Tulikuwa tunailala vibaya sana. But, he's grown to a point where, and I can say for a time I was ahead of him, but we decided to form a group and decided to incrementally implement small changes, just forming a group and communicating via email, sending research pieces, discussing things. The next thing he has changed so much, he's lecturing me about the types of planes to board, right? It grows. It's something small. You just need to believe in yourself, find yourself in the right spaces, the right group of people, and that's why this engagement is critical. Let's ensure that the person who knows the most in this room, by the time we meet next, there is no disparity. That's how we close that gap and become more resourceful. And I know I want to take the mic. I'll just love to also quickly answer the question on the incentives. As for the incentives, it's purely about you understanding how policy affects your life. For many citizens, the reason people are not so angered about corruption is because you say somebody has stolen 50 billion na mtu mwenye alilala na tao yake chini ya pilo bado iko hapo. That person will be like, okay, aliiba, but they really don't understand the meaning of that. They don't understand that by that money being stolen, the value of the shilling might go up or down, and it will affect the value of that 1,000 shillings they have. So they don't really see the connection between that policy scene and their exact life. So for the incentives, there are no bigger incentives that will ever come except for the youth recognizing that these policies actually guide our lives. And that's the incentive enough they will get to participate more. And I'll quickly now connect to what she asked about how will the other people know, how will we include these conversations to, the last mile youth or the rural youth. It's again ensuring that we close the disparity in information, we remove that asymmetry of information in this room, so that everyone in this room is as good as the other person, so that whichever other ecosystem we find ourselves in, we are able to generate that knowledge without having to gather here again to share the same things, right? So yeah, for
Awesome.
lack of more time, I'll stop there.
Awesome. Ayan, final thoughts?
I think the questions have been addressed, but I only have one key takeaway, and it's something that I learned last year. We've spoken about participating, doing community engagements, etc. But there's just one thing I want to share with you all. There's a time last year I met with one of my mentors, and this mentor told me something that I've taken to heart till date. So the first thing he said is, if you only took the opportunities that were offered to you, you'd be very far ahead. And what does this mean? As you guys are having the conversations on the different tables, and someone is offering to do something for you, or you're talking about, I want to participate in this policy. And then someone tells you, yes, I will involve you, I'll send you an email. And then you don't end up meeting the end of the bargain, your bargain, the part where you're supposed to do. And so part of showing up is taking opportunities that has been offered to you. Oftentimes, you talk to people and they're like, yeah, reach out to me. We'll see what can be done. But you never end up reaching out, and you still complain about that lack specifically. So when we're going forward, if you take every single opportunity that is offered to you through someone else, please take it. And through that, we'll be able to contribute to a healthy ecosystem of brilliant, mindful youth.
Awesome. What a brilliant way to close it. Let's appreciate our panelists, Sankara, Chibole, and Ayan. I think I will close it there. And I've also realized that with the research, there's always an outlier. So the gentleman really spoke 1-to-1 word with the lady. So, but it was brilliant to host the three of you and getting to hear your insights. Asanteni.